is just a picture that symbolizes, I think, the state of our world. We were just, Marcele, we were just walking, and you said, talked about your experience in South Africa and how important the work, the NGO you were with is, going to the HIV positive people, and how they don't get funding from the wealthy part of society, as if there is a gap. And this is the image, there are people having their vacation, a vacation on the beach in Spain, and there is a lifeless body of one of the immigrants who come with boats from Africa, just lying there, and they don't care. They just enjoy their vacation. And I think this is really resonating and linking up to the story that you told me. And this I observe everywhere, as if certain segments of society live in bubbles, and they don't really experience in their bodies what the entire human family, what all the rest experiences. So it's always this bubble thinking, and then this is a kind of, I think, the most insidious conflict we have in our times. This bubble living. And Paulo Freire, I think he is right when he says that humanization is the great challenge of our times. And do you know what this is? What do you think? You might want to come here because you will have to look through me all the time.
I will go there.
So what do you think this is? One idea. It's Sumatra, the tsunami. The person who took the picture died several seconds later. The picture was found in the rubble 3 weeks later in a digital camera. You see there, the water wall, the tsunami is coming, will in a few seconds eat all these houses. And I think this is a picture symbolic of our crisis time worldwide. We think we are in a normal world, but we have a crisis looming. And what should we do in this situation? I think we should become this unknown rebel. This is a very famous photography, on Tiananmen Square. One person stopping all these tanks. And I have dedicated my entire life to gathering people like that, so that we can stop this crisis. Not stop, but do something about it that will end in a more constructive future, or that will lead us to a more constructive future. So I'm here to, somebody says, you are fishing Mandelas, fishing for Mandelas, fishing for Gandhis, fishing for Paulo Freire's, or of these unknown rebels. And this is exactly what I do my entire life. And what do I do myself in order to do this work? And what do I invite everybody else to do as well? Is go up like a bird and look at our world from afar. Therefore, studying history as you do is very important, I think. And literature, where you get an impasse into experience that is different from the ready-made theories. You have an overview, and especially like you are, studying literature from many parts of the world, so you get an overview, not only your own experience, but other people's experience. So this gives you then a bird's eye perspective. However, a bird can also go down, and go down into the detail. Like one provocative, I don't know whether I should say it here, we can speak about it later. One very provocative question for me here in this, if we want to go into real detail, what is wrong about this room? We can discuss that later, but this would be the really, really going down into detail and asking questions that other people would not ask. So, going up further, going out of our comfort zone, going further up and going further down. So, very briefly, who am I now officially? Like the most official description would be, I'm the founding president of a global network of about 1,000 members, whom I have invited personally, globally, and the name of this network is Human Dignity and Humiliation Studies. It is a global fellowship of like-minded academics and practitioners. You see who this is here? Mm-hmm. And then you see, I'm the founding president, this is our director, Linda in Portland, Oregon, Mike in New Jersey, Uli Spalthoff in Germany. But this is really absolutely global, and about 40,000 people from 180 countries read the website humiliationstudies.org. So this website is the only thing you really need to write down. I'm the webmaster of this website, so please, if you find any mistake, write to me, because I don't have time to check everything. So I depend on you to help me with that. You know, I'm working during the night. At 2 o'clock at night, I have put the newest pictures on this website, and I make mistakes. You know, I forgot the links and so on. So I depend on you. These are the conferences. This network exists. The website exists since 2003, and we have had 10, conferences all over the world since. Please come in. Welcome. We have had conferences all over the world. We have 2 conferences per year, and you are all very, very warmly invited. And Gabi came to one of our conferences in 2009 in New York, to a workshop on transforming humiliation and violent conflict. This is every year in December in New York, so you would find me in November, December each year in New York. And in January, February, you would find me in Norway. The rest of the year, you find me globally. So this is my first time in South America. So every year in New York in December, and the other conference is somewhere else. So the next one now will be in August in Norway, and via video connection in Oregon. The next year we will have our conference in April in South Africa. So you're all very, very warmly welcome. Please buy a ticket now. So the metaphor that I use for describing our work is a tree. Our work grows like a tree. It's not a pre-planned. We don't sit down, make a business plan, do fundraising, and then get an office, and then employ a fundraiser or activists, and then when the funding is ending, also our project will be finished. We don't do that. We develop our work like a movement or like a growth process. You know, the 4 people I talked about, Linda and Mike and Uli and I, we are giving water to the trunk and the tree and the roots of this tree, and we invite you to build your branches on this tree. And when people ask us, what are you doing? You know, what is the achievement? Then the achievement, like this lecture, would be one of the fruit, one of our achievements, you could say. And last year we thought that we could make our work a little bit more tangible, at least the education branch on this tree. We launched the World Dignity University Initiative. And you're also very much invited to contribute to that. Every educator on this world, on this planet, every student is invited to contribute to that. And we go back to the original meaning of the word universitas, scholarium. It's a community of scholars. So we don't start with institutions, we don't start with the house, we don't start with the business plan. We start with people, with you. It's a movement of people, like-minded people. Now I come to the most difficult part, and yes, I think it's because of Gabi that I have the courage to do that. She encouraged me to do that. Okay, so now we come to literature, and to conflict, and to war. And this is my father. And this is the Second World War. And this is Germany today. This was West Germany. This was East Germany. You remember the DDR, communist part, which is now one. You remember it was unified. And then there is this. My parents come from there. This is Silesia. Silesia, Pomerania, and East Prussia went to Poland in 1945-45. And in 1945-46, 10 to 15 million people were displaced from here. Among them, my parents. They were ending up on a train that put them near Hanover. And Gabi has the brochure of Hamlet in her bag.
No, the other one. Yeah.
So imagine, now we come to conflict and war and all the consequences. This is a poster that was put in Silesia, on the roads, on the poles, on the trees. And there it is written that everybody who has a Germanic background and has no permission to stay has to go to the bus station tomorrow morning with something, small suitcase, and then you would have to be careful a bit, the battery might go down if you keep it on. So go to the bus station and leave the key of the house outside. And be aware that they will never be able to come back to their things and their home. That they will be transported away. So here you have one of these posters that were there. And I made perhaps I should, do you want me to, the interesting thing is really for conflict. Here, this poster says, the Slavic population that has been Germanized with violence and insidiousness is cared for by me, the signed, and is given the opportunity to return to Polishness, for which the best daughters and sons of these primordially Slavic territories have been bleeding. So here you have, do you know the Hamelin? Yeah. Do you know the legend of the Pied Piper? Yeah? It was about 800 years ago, 1,000 years ago, the city of Hamelin, which is here. You see Hamburg here, Frankfurt here, Paris here, Belgium here, you see, was infested by rats. The Pied Piper came and said, I will free the city from rats. And he went through the streets, played the flute, all the rats followed. He went into the river, all the rats drowned. He went to the mayor and said, now I need to be paid. The mayor betrayed him and said, oh, we have no rats here. So next Sunday, the Pied Piper took revenge. He went through the streets, played the flute, and all the children were alone at home and the adults in church. And the next, the children followed, the mountain opened, and all the children disappeared. This is the legend. And it has quite some historical truth in it. Because about 1,000 years ago, Germanic knights somehow conquered this area, and they needed settlers, farmers, and they Shanghaied people. So people from here, they were kind of invited or Shanghaied into going here. So people did disappear. The children of the city did disappear. So you could say 800 years later, my parents are like the children of these children who disappeared, and they were thrown back 800 years later. Of course, for my parents, they don't come back. They don't have a feeling of coming back. For my parents, it's a feeling of losing their homeland. Sorry. You see, you have these posters. You have these posters in Silesia, in the streets here, and about 10 to 15 million were displaced. And they were put on trains, and I could have a Russian passport, because some trains went to Siberia. I could have a Canadian passport. My father was to go to Canada. Some few stayed here. I would have a Polish passport. By chance, I have a German passport. But if you ask me if I'm German, I would say no. My father says, I am Silesian. Germany has destroyed me. Hitler has raped me, has raped our lives. So I'm Silesian, he would say. But there is no Silesia anymore. And I have visited it twice. So where was I born? Where am I from? If you want my honest answer, I'm from displacement. My father has to dream every day. He would, you remember this picture where he's sitting on the horse. This is the farm he was to inherit. He is every evening, his mind, walking the land of this farm, together with the two elder brothers who died in the war. So he lives on this farm, even now, more than 60 years later, and he longs for going home every day. He has never, since 1945, attached himself to this planet, to this earth, to humankind. He has never been able to create a kind of real feeling of belonging to this human family on this planet. So you see, this is, you could say, the effect of displacement, of war. You know, first war, then displacement, and you see how it is done. You imagine you face that, you know, next day you have to stand somewhere, you will be transported away, and other people will move into your city and into your house. You know, the city where my mother was born, the capital of Silesia, is the city in the world that changed inhabitants almost 100%, 99, 98%. The change of inhabitants in very, very short while. So this is my father after the war. I'm, you know, 2 years old. And you see he has lost one arm in the war because he tried to undermine the war. He was drafted, you know, he has a Jewish grandfather, but his other forefathers are German, and the fact that he has a Jewish grandfather was hidden successfully, so he was only harassed because he looks quite Jewish. But so he was drafted after his 2 elder brothers had died in the war already. And he says he already almost did not survive the training. It was so brutal. And then he was... imagine you are 17, 18 years old. You are born in here, on a farm. You love your family, you love your animals. And then you are, you know, your elder brothers already died, and then you are trained to be a soldier. He was sent here, and soon after he was here, D-Day started. And almost all the others in his battalion died. And I interview him now. I try to interview him 1 hour per year now, with this video camera, 1 hour per year. And he says that he has to recover 6 months. After having talked for 1 hour, he has to recover for 6 months. And now, this year, I was with him now, and I wanted, you know, every week, every day, I asked, when do you think? No, he can't anymore. He says he cannot recover from it. So he cannot talk anymore about it. And so I asked him what, you know, so he was here, and then he fled. It's a long story. And then he came to Holland as an occupying German soldier. And he was completely against this whole Hitler ideology and war, and he wanted to simply be a fellow human being with the Dutch population, which was punishable by death, fraternization. He had to stay above them and humiliate them wherever he could, and he didn't want to do that. So he became a friend of the local population, and after a while he was found out, which, you know, could have led that he should have been executed. His superior saved him, but he was then punished, and he was sent to the East Front, and he has a long story how he then lost his arm there. So you see a completely destroyed human being, you know, from sitting proudly on the horse, and then, you know, completely, not destroyed, I would say, because he has, you know, even though he lives after death with God, this is his way of surviving. He has preserved a profound humanity. He is the most human, among the most human people I know on this planet, in kind of purity of humanity. And so this is the story of a few years where this man was caught in history. And I know that this is not something that is, you know, particular to Europe. It's everywhere, that people get caught in history in ways that really test them beyond any imagination. You know, later I will tell you I went to write my doctoral dissertation in Rwanda. There are similar situations. Imagine, what would you do? What would you do? Imagine what you would do. You are a Hutu man or woman in Rwanda, and your Hutu colleagues come and say, you are married to a Tutsi spouse, and some of your children look like Tutsis. If you want to show your love to the Hutu cause, you have to kill them. What would you do? You have the choice between two loves, the love for the Hutu cause or the love for your family. what would you do? You know, I think everybody who sits here and who is not forced into such moral dilemmas can be extremely grateful. And we need to have humility and not judge people who have, for example, in that case, killed their family. You know, I met then psychiatrists in Kenya who told me that some of these people who had killed their family would then be, you know, no longer heroes, because as long as the genocide was going on, they were heroes, they were on the right side, they were loving the Hutu cause. Then the genocide was ending, and they were, you know, the perpetrators of a genocide who had to go into hiding, somewhere in Kenya in hiding, and there they were needing psychiatric help, because some couldn't eat anymore. They would see the fingers of their children on the plate when eating. And, you know, who had killed their family? Who? They themselves. So, you know, so my family, being born into my family has taught me about the moral dilemmas and the, you know, various levels of being caught in choices that nobody deserves to be caught in. So this is my father later, and then I took my parents some years ago and I forced them into the car and I forced them to drive all the way to Silesia, because I said, I need to see that, you know, I need to see how it looks like. You have an imagination of that, it's your home, but I have no imagination of that. You know, so I would like to see it. And so there was the stable of the horses still untouched a few years ago, and as you know, as if the horse would come out there. Now we went back 2007, and this building was erased. It was no longer there. We don't know who lives there. We just went there, snuck in, because the people who live there now, they are very afraid of Germans coming back. They think that the Germans might want to take their land back in a way, you know. So we were very careful not to raise any suspicion, you know. We didn't make too many photos. We went very quickly so that nobody would get afraid that we were planning something. This is my family some years ago. So you see my father, my mother, both from Silesia, but he from the countryside, she from the city. And I'm the eldest, then my younger brother, and then my younger sister. And I think if the war had not happened, there would not have been, you know, the displacement would not have happened, and then also the other another secondary effect of displacement is that many of these displaced people, you know, they arrived, they were displaced into places where they were not wanted. You know, after the Second World War, all Europe was destroyed, and Germany particularly, so every village was forced to take some of these people who had nothing. So, you know, how do you feel? You just lost your home, and then you are put in a place where you're not welcome. So therefore, my identity, startup identity, until I was at the age of 45, was here where we are not at home, and there's no home for us to go to. So my startup identity is I don't belong to this human family. There's no place for me. So imagine you are, you know, in a place where you are not welcome. You just lost everything. So they were very open to being missioned. They were converted. Many, you know, siblings of my father, for example, to be, and you say Jehovah's Witness. You would know what that is.
Yes.
Yes. So they would then not speak with my family, because from their point of view, my family are not dogmatic enough, not religious enough. So you have this other secondary effect that my father suddenly, the few siblings that are still alive, can't talk to him because he is not religious enough, you know. So this is another secondary effect. And then I am the one, and my family is very religious, you know. You would call them evangelical, like Billy Graham. I'm not sure what would be the equivalent here. Born again Christians, and I am the only one who does not subscribe to this kind of dogma. And I resonate with with a sentence which 14th century Sufi poet, thank you so much, Sufi poet Hafiz has written. This is me, this describes me, 14th century Persian Sufi poet Hafiz. I have learned so much from God that I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Jew. The truth has shed so much of itself in me that I can no longer call myself a man, a woman. So this would be me. And in being so, not wanting to subscribe to one dogma, like Christian dogma, I am then also kind of excluded from this family in many ways. So you see all these rifts, these ruptures, secondary to war and then displacement. And, how do I say that? This is now the difficult thing, Gabi. I would be so happy if you could say that now. But I have to force myself to try to repeat what I told you yesterday. I told you yesterday. So
you waited your whole life for this picture.
Yes, yes. This picture is somehow something, it's taken in 2006. I was to give a talk in Switzerland. I received a prize for my work by the Association of Applied Psychologists in Zurich. And my work is in English. And my parents, even though my father says he is Silesian and not German, still he has a German passport and he speaks German. Okay. His Silesian language is dying with him, but he speaks High German and not English. So my family, my mother and my father, since I'm also not subscribing to their religious dogma, they have always thought that whatever I do must be some kind of, they rather don't ask, it will be too wild. And so therefore they never knew what I do. And they wouldn't even ask, and they would be ashamed even, when the neighbors would ask, "What is Evelin doing? She has no house, no money, no man, no children, no job." And there I received the prize for my work, and I managed to invite them, and they managed, to take the plane. My father hates, he's afraid of flying. Okay, so I managed to get them on a plane to Zurich and to position them in the middle of 200 people so that they couldn't escape. And I prepared for my talk for a whole year. It was 20 minutes just for my father, because it was in German. The only time he would be forced, and my mother would be forced to listen, and couldn't go away. We were forced to sit there. Oh, so I was for 20 minutes. This talk was, nobody in the audience knew that basically my talk was only for my father. And somebody had the guts, or not the guts, the intelligence, I don't know, because I didn't ask anybody to take a picture. Somebody took a picture of the moment. This was the moment, really a moment I lived for, where he understands. And you see there his arm, he has only one arm, and he understands. He understands, he has always understood, but this was an important moment. So you see how difficult it is to talk about this. So therefore I force myself to talk about this now. Why do I force myself? Why? Because I think I should write a book, a letter to my father, where I somehow show how his biography and his courage and his humility and humanity became visible to me over the years. As a child I had no idea, he was just a father, And only in hindsight do I see very, very humane streaks or traits in him. For example, recently I was on a bus, I took the bus from Chile to Bolivia, La Paz, and then to Sao Paulo. So it was about 5 days bus. And I think in Argentina or Bolivia, I was sitting here, and a woman was sitting there and she was emptying her purse, reading everything, and throwing everything what she didn't want out of the window of the bus. Okay, and other people threw plastic out of the bus, and along the roads were lined with plastic and paper litter. Okay, so I sit there, and there she does this. And I remember my father. What would my father do with us as children? He would not scold us if we threw something away. No, he would take our hand, he would put everything in his one hand, and he would keep it in his pocket until he would come to a rubbish bin. So I turned to that woman and I tried in my Spanish. I said, please, could you give me your rubbish? I will put it into a rubbish bin. So you see, so many years later, I appreciate what my father did when I was a child, when I couldn't appreciate it. So Gabi says, Gabi knows that I live a global life. I have no house, no fixed address. As I said, January, February in Norway, November, December in New York. The rest global. And she says, and she is right, that I should write this book before my father dies, and I should make an effort to put, to free 6 months in some place where I have space and where I can write this book. This I should do, and because I'm so afraid of this book, I rather don't think of it. Try not to think of it. So our decision now, yesterday, was that we will use this lecture for me to talk about it and to make it perhaps a little bit less difficult to think. I cannot even think. I have written a lot. Okay, there is a lot of material, but it's not in a literature, in a form that could be making literature. So, and I don't know how. I've never written such a book, so I'm in panic when I just think of it. And so...
Because all your books are technical.
Yes, not technical, but they're more academic, less personal. And also I would be very afraid to offend my father, even so he cannot read English and the book might not be translated into German, he might never read it. Still, I don't want to somehow expose him or in some way humiliate him now. So this is what I have so far, and yesterday we put that in here, Gabi and I. So I'm talking about this now in order that you help me get courage. So I hope it will help. So, and then I'm now quickly finishing my talk and we can go into dialogue. I just want to explain to you a little bit more of what I did in my life. So I stayed in this little village where my parents had been kind of dumped after displacement, they had no choice, they just were put there. And so I stayed there until I was 19, I finished school. And then I started to live globally. The first 25 years without me knowing why I did it. So I live now globally since almost 40 years. So I started when I was 20. So the first 10 years between I was 20 and 30, if you say that the human family is a book, I tried to read the contents list. I studied psychology first and then medicine and used these studies. I never wanted to become a psychologist or a medical doctor, so at that time I was feeling guilty. Why do you study psychology and medicine and you know that you will never be you don't want to be that, so how come? What is happening with you? So now I understand, but at that time I didn't understand. I used these studies for my own private anthropological studies, because as a medical student, for example, it's very easy to become part of a different culture. I was 6 months of these 10 years away. Like as a medical student, I worked in a hospital at a surgery ward in Bangkok, or in China, or in New Zealand, or in Africa, or I tried to, or in Israel. I tried to become part as much as possible of other contexts. I tried to learn to get a gut feeling for the 5, 6 big families of languages, just to feel how does it feel to be born into the Chinese culture and script and language. How does it feel to be born in the Arab or Russian context? So this is what was my aim. The first 10 years, you could say, until I was 30, I read the contents list of the book of Humankind. Then I was 30 years old, and then you could say, I opened one chapter in this book in more depth, and this was the Arab world. I spent 7 years as a clinical psychologist in Egypt, in Cairo. I was the only Western clinical psychologist in Egypt where clients could come for long-term therapy. And again, I learned. I was becoming part. I always told my Egyptian clients, I have to pay you, because I learned so much about conflict resolution by what is an extended family in a collectivist society doing when they have problems. And what kind of problems do they have compared to what Western people like in US or Europe would have. There are marked differences. So this was another learning time. And then when I was about 40, I went to Europe and I wrote my dissertation in medicine on quality of life. I compared how a good life is defined in Germany among intellectuals and Egypt among intellectuals. And then I had 3 years of, and I also thought, while I wrote this dissertation, I interviewed intellectuals in Germany, and I was shocked by the fact that I, through my global life, had deeply changed. My body, everything, my soul had changed in a way that I felt deeply kind of what I call global responsibility. I felt that, who else but people who have resources and time and education must devote their time to thinking about how we can make our human life on this planet sustainable. We cannot expect the farmer in Bangladesh to do all who is just running from the next flood to do all the work. So, but these intellectuals in Germany, in Hamburg, one of the richest cities in Europe, they did not think at all like that. So it shocked me, and I thought, okay, now I seem to have learned something, my global life seemed to have taught me something. What is it? I have no words for it, really. And so I tried to find words, and thought also that I could not just simply say, oh, stupid people, they don't learn, or they don't know what I know. No, I had to communicate it. So I thought perhaps I have to become a politician. So I entered a small party in Germany just to learn how politics work, and it was a good lesson, and I left the party again. And then politics not for me. And then I thought I should become an activist, and I became an activist. It was an amazing experience. I went, Hamburg, very rich city, 1.5 million people. I went to the media and said, to my view, everybody here who has a bit of time should sit down and make their personal aim to become more knowledgeable about the challenges, the global challenges we have, and find ways to contribute. And I had many examples, and I went on all the media, and I invited the city. I said, come all one Saturday in 1993 to the middle of the city, and there's a big lake, and there's a big park, 7 kilometers circumference, and everybody came. 25,000 people came. 4,000 people had prepared objects which we displayed. So I really became an activist, you could say, and was very known. It was very, very interesting. It was a very special festival. We called it the Necklace of Ideas Festival. And after that I thought, so what is it with my life now? Should I now become more of an academic, or an activist, politician? What is my life about? I want to, and it became clearer and clearer that I want to dedicate every minute of my life to something that is useful for humanity. But what would be useful for humanity? I didn't really know. How can I be useful? And so it took me 3 years to find that. Next step in my life project, you could say. And I talked with everybody, and somehow it emerged that I should try to formulate in one short sentence what would give me enough passion to pursue the rest of my life. And this sentence emerged. The sentence would be, okay, if we say that we as a human family on this planet have global challenges and that we have to cooperate to meet them, what is the most important hindrance, obstacle to global cooperation? So this was the question, and then my intuitive answer was dynamics of humiliation. I learned as a clinical psychologist, if a family comes to me and they want to reconcile and they have humiliated each other, it's very difficult, the most difficult case. can perhaps not be reconciled. Humiliation creates the most profound rifts. Okay, so I thought, yes, and then also the European history. You have a socio-psychological hypothesis, you know, that humiliation leads to war and respect leads to peace. You all know the First World War, you know the Versailles treaties, the so-called peace treaties after the First World War. They intentionally humiliated Germany to make Germany harmless. What was the result? It was counterproductive, this humiliation. Hitler used precisely the argument of national humiliation to start World War II. And after World War II, Germany was embedded as a respected member in the European family, and peace was the result. So humiliation led to war, respect led to peace. Okay, so my intuition was humiliation creates war even, you know, so I went to the library. It was about 1994, and I thought that there must be a huge amount of literature on humiliation and war, whatever, you know, humiliation. And there was one single book, serious book, with the word humiliation in the title. One single book. There was no field of humiliation studies. The word humiliation was not an academic term. The phenomenon was everywhere. Wherever you read about war, aggression, trauma, bullying, it's humiliation. But the word itself was not studied. You want to say something? No, okay. So, so I thought, wow, this seems to be the universe's invitation to me, you know, to do something. And so I devised a research project on humiliation and war. I went to Somalia and Rwanda and asked them, okay, if humiliation had something to do, led to war in the history of Europe, does humiliation and war and genocide have a link here in Africa today? If yes, how? This was my doctoral dissertation in psychology, and I got a stipend for 4 years in Norway from the Foreign Ministry in Norway. I had my office at the University of Oslo in Norway, and I defended my dissertation there in 2001. And since 2001, I create humiliation studies globally. And only now do I understand why I always lived globally. You know, only now I understand why I did what I did about 20, 30 years ago. It has its place now. So this is a picture from Somalia, this is Rwanda. In Rwanda, I learned really that feelings of humiliation, I call them the nuclear bomb of the emotions. I think the humiliated mind and heart is the only real weapon of mass destruction. Here you can see it, the Radio Milcolin disseminated the propaganda that in order to prevent the former Tutsi elite to come back and humiliate the Hutu majority in the future, as they did in the past, to prevent future humiliation, these people had to be killed. So genocide as a prevention of future humiliation. The same with Hitler. He said the world Jewry plan for world domination. This was what he thought. And in order to prevent that, to save us from this humiliation, we have to kill them all. Or first he wanted to bring them all to Madagascar, but then he came to the final solution, killing them all. So genocide as a prevention of future humiliation. And it is very cost effective. You know, in Rwanda, nobody bought any weapons. You know, if anybody of you had the plan to become an extremist leader, this is the most cost effective way to do it. Because everybody has these machetes in their houses. If you instigate these feelings of humiliation, this narrative of humiliation, and you tell the people, you know, if you want to protect your people, you have to kill them or our enemies. Or if you really get that going, then you don't need money anymore. You only need a radio station. Very cost effective. The same thing with 9/11. Who paid the missiles that took down the Twin Towers? The victims. Here, again, you know, who paid, you know, many victims paid for bullets to be shot in and not hacked to death. So the victims paid for their own killing. So this is when you have feelings of humiliation going on, being instigated, you know, then it's extremely cost effective. Same with suicide, terrorists, you know, as soon as you get these feelings going and a kind of mission to prevent humiliation going, then you almost don't need money anymore. So I wrote 4 books. This is the first book, the second book I could say with humiliation in the title. It took me 3 years. No publisher wanted to have this word in the title. And then when it came out in 2006, the year after, it received a prize in the United States. It's an American publisher. It was awarded the prize of one of the best academic publications in the United States. So you see, first it's not wanted, and then it receives a prize. And the second book, you see there, they took out the word humiliation again, emotional conflict, how human rights can dignify emotion and help us wage good conflict. And then the third book, here we have humiliation again, gender, humiliation and global security, dignifying relationships from love, sex and parenthood to world affairs. This came out in 2010. And this, you know, here I felt I have now 3 books in the academic publishing world, and I felt that this academic publishing world is so undignifying. You know, it's a kind of profit-making machine on the shoulders of poor students and for the benefit of some investors. So I had the feeling, and the author does not, you know, get anything. I have perhaps earned $1,000 with 3 books in 5 years or something, and I paid the lady to look into my language, English language, more than that. So I've never earned any money with these books, and so I felt that I could no longer publish books about dignity in such an undignified context. So when we launched our World Dignity University initiative, we also founded Dignity Press as a not-for-profit enterprise. So this is the first book in Dignity Press. We have now already 3 books. And I told you that we are 4 people at the core. Uli Spalthoff in Stuttgart in Germany is the director of this. So he has worked very hard to make more books, to put these books out, and you are all invited. Whoever wants to write about a topic that has to do with dignity, it can also be a novel, it can be anything, is invited to publish here. So, I think we decided to stop here. Gabi, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. So, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't know how to thank you for listening to this. For me, very difficult. Hour, or I don't know how much time we